Lincoln Riley, according to multiple reports now, headed to USC. It's 3 letters, but it's not LSU. USC. This was a stunner. I don't know anyone who saw this coming. And if someone tells you they did, you need to be very leery of those folks. As I said earlier today on Twitter, there are a few national types who are truly plugged in the coaching world. It's because A, they know all the coaches, and B, they know all the agents. It's not difficult, and they know the athletic directors. And they also know when they're being played and when they're not, okay? And that's a very important formula because there are a lot of folks out there that check 1 or 2 of those boxes. Very few of them check all of them. Bruce Feldman is a guy with the Athletic that checks all of them. And Bruce Feldman last week, as the Lincoln Riley to LSU flicker turned into a flame, turned into a bonfire, he came out and he said, that's not going to happen. And he was criticized. He was chastised because the guy who has a history of credibility buildup, I guess because he said something that certain people didn't like, he was dismissed. And he was the one who was labeled the fool. And he was the one who had that brand stamped on his forehead, you're being played. Well, no, he was trying to save you. He was trying to save you the pain today. Anyway, Bruce Feldman, amongst others, has now reported that Lincoln Riley is leaving Oklahoma, but he's headed to USC. Now, here's where I want to dive in, because everyone could talk about how stunned they are. Oh, I'm stunned. Believe me, I'm stunned. Here's what I want to point out. So I'm holding a piece of paper, because as I was preparing for the show tonight, Jesse was reading something from the aforementioned Bruce Feldman. It's like a Bruce infomercial right now. And he was reading an article that is in all likelihood quoting Lincoln Riley himself, at the very least quoting people close to Riley. And Bruce Feldman was talking about what appealed to Lincoln Riley about the USC job. Now, I want you to listen to this. He said the appeal of LA was there. You've heard that before. Most people who take the USC job or who are interested, they like the appeal of LA. It continues, though. He loved the local recruiting talent. Okay, stands to reason anyone who took that job would. He was attracted to the idea of rebuilding a premier brand. Admirable. But here's the one that really stood out to me. According to Bruce Feldman and the folks over at The Athletic, what appealed to Lincoln Riley about the USC job was the alignment of the administration. Never thought I'd hear that. And if that's the case, then I was dead wrong about the process that was ongoing at USC. Because the word around the water cooler had been, oh, we got actual Los Angeles B-roll. That's nice, Jesse and Colin. The word around the water cooler had been that USC didn't have its collective affairs in order, and there was a razor-sharp focus at places like LSU. And when Florida came open, for the record, Florida did have a razor-sharp focus, but the status of the USC coaching search paled in comparison to the organizational structure that existed in other parts of the country. Well, if you listen to folks like Bruce Feldman, who are very dialed in, say things like Lincoln Riley was very impressed with the alignment of the administration, that's a big deal. Please don't let that get lost in the shuffle, because if that is, and we have no reason to believe it's not, if that is the state of affairs at USC, number one, it's a change from the norm. Number two, it means everything that you would want to accomplish is going to be there. Because, see, first hurdle has been getting the right coach in there. Second hurdle, you would argue bigger than the first, would have been getting that coach everything he's going to need to succeed. Well, if you've got that fabled alignment of the administration, maybe it's not going to be as big a hurdle as we thought. So the huge story here, you think, for the Pac-12 is, Lincoln Riley to USC. No, that's not the big story for the Pac-12. So I want to be very clear about this. A lot of people are painting this as the big story for the Pac-12, Lincoln Riley to USC. That's the big story for USC fans. Outside of that, Washington's not really affected by that one way or the other. The big story for the Pac-12 is a 5-star candidate out there with options coast to coast chose you over the SEC. I don't care if it's been recruiting. I don't care if it's been the coaching carousel. That hasn't been a popular headline. That has been a headline that has been totally missing in action. It was the case a generation ago that there were places on the West Coast, namely USC, that were more admirable as destinations than places in the South. That hasn't been the case recently. And up until this morning, for a candidate that had his choice of USC or LSU or Florida, you can fill in the blank there, or Oklahoma. You know, I can insert Oklahoma here. There are a lot of folks out there, I'm not so sure I wouldn't include myself in this group, that thinks all things considered right now, Oklahoma would be a better job than USC. However, the reason I have said that is because I didn't perceive USC to have, in the words of Bruce Feldman, an alignment administratively behind the scenes. Well, if they have that, Well, yeah, USC rockets up that tier, that ladder, if you will. It rockets up rung after rung after rung of being one of the most desirable jobs in the country. Here's the next order of business. Who's coming with Lincoln Riley? I'm not talking about his staff, although I'm interested in that too. This is going to be the first case study in the immersion of the coaching carousel into the transfer portal era, because we haven't really had a case study of a candidate this high profile leaving a job this high profile to go to another one and then seeing what his roster does. There is a widely held notion out there that I believe that several high profile names from the Oklahoma roster, you're thinking the Caleb Williams, for example, of the world, will leave Oklahoma if given the opportunity, which they will be given, to go to USC. Which, number one, makes you think, how good immediately can USC be? Number two, what status does it leave Oklahoma in? And then the third headline that kind of falls off the USC radar, but it's on the national radar, is where's Oklahoma going? I mean, that's the big story here. Whether Riley went to LSU or as it turns out, he goes to USC, the big story here, outside of the obvious, is the Oklahoma job's open. Like, this is about to be an SEC Western Division program with immense resources in and of itself, and it's open now. So you can take the Chicken Little approach of saying, oh man, in the immediacy, we're going to lose these players. Or you can realize, all right, we lost a big-time candidate. It's a gut punch for us. But man, shouldn't this job be coveted? Answer, yes, it should be. So then the follow-up is, well, where are we going to look? And I've got to believe that there's been at least some groundwork done here, because the Lincoln Riley rumors have been there. What I am very curious to find out, and I don't know if we ever will, but I'm very curious to find out how many other candidates were involved in the USC search and how big of a shock is this to them. I know Matt Campbell's name has been tied to that job. And Matt Campbell looked for all the world like he was checking out yesterday at Iowa State. He was very emotional. I'm not telling you firsthand, I know this, I'm telling you, if you were to watch him and you were to know all the external factors that are happening in the coaching world, you would think that's a guy who knows this was his last job in Ames, or last game as having the head job in Ames. And you've had Dave Aranda, and Dave Aranda recently reportedly re-ups with Baylor. So I'm very curious. You're going to be told Lincoln Riley was the first and only choice. I get how that works. I'm be very interested if we can find out. I'll do some digging. If we can find out how many other guys were in play and how big of a surprise was this to them, because there's a lot of ripple effect. There's a lot of ripple effect that happens behind the scenes always, but there's a lot that happens in the coaching market, and you never know how the LSU search or subsequent searches that are going to happen, how they're impacted by how big a surprise one hire is. It's crazy, and that's not even getting down to the coordinator level and then the assistant position coach level. It's a wild, wild scene right now. But I will tell you this is so surprising in a good way for USC. Selfishly, I'm excited because it may, in fact, give me a reason to go to a USC game soon, which I haven't had. Trust me, I've looked for one. The other thing, okay, so Jesse just came in my ear for the first time in the show. Lincoln Riley to USC is official. Hold on. I want to put my finger to my ear. Okay, Lincoln Riley releases a statement. Continue, Jesse. Go ahead. He sent it to my email. Jesse, I can't read an email on air. Or can I? No, I'm not going to do it. Should I? No. Maybe. No, I'm not going to. So Lincoln Riley to USC is official. The other thing that I was going to say there is when you get down to the assistant coaching level, this is chaos. I was talking to two of them today. This is chaos. You always assume that if you've got, let's say, a defensive line coach or an offensive coordinator on your speed dial from a staff, they just know everything that's going on. They didn't. And another thing, and I'm going to dig into this a little bit later, be very careful. I think some of us learned, some of you guys learned, we never ran with anything here. Some of you learned a hard lesson. I'm going to talk about it later. You get played during two seasons. They kind of converge. Recruiting and coaching searches. You get played. It's the only time of year that people have incentive to lie to you who would otherwise be your best friends. And some people got played out there. And so let's learn that lesson, and then let's learn to say, I don't know. That's what we said during the Lincoln Riley LSU rumor season. We didn't know. Well, now we do know because they've made it official. Lincoln Riley goes to USC.